One of my favorite things in leathercraft is a well-burnished edge. I'm gonna keep sanding until it's all a uniform color. We're not pushing too hard. We don't want it to mushroom out too much. Apply a little water, wipe it off. That edge is good to go, perfectly flush. Hi there, I'm Peter. I'm a crafter in San Francisco. My brand is Pelican Pete, and my favorite thing about leathercraft is edge finishing, and I want to show you my process, all the steps, and how I get nice glassy edges. So the materials I have burnishing canvas, 4 different grits of sandpaper that I'll be using. I have 220, 320, 400, and 600. Then I'll finish with Columbus wax and a little bit of Tokonole. When you're working with vegetable tan leathers, you're able to get a burnished edge that is really remarkable to look at, but also durable. You don't have to mess with edge painting. You can do this with just sandpaper, canvas, and water. So before we start, I want to share why it's important to do it in the first place. The fibers of leather, before you even start sanding, they're a non-uniform length, and what we're trying to do is not only get them the same length, but all aligned in the same direction. That'll create a seal when you're burnishing and protect it when it's used day after day for years. Not only will it look good, but it'll actually make a longer lasting, higher quality product. Here's a wallet. I've finished the inside, I've stitched up everything, and now I'm to the point where I need to finish the edges. We start with 220 grit. It's a coarse grit, and it allows us to do the most important part, which is get a true flat edge. And we have to have that before we move to the next grit of sandpaper. Anything that isn't truly flush will only become more magnified and apparently wrong when we move to the higher grit. So it's key for us to make sure we have a truly flush edge before we move on. So we're gonna take the 220 grit sandpaper. You wanna make sure you have a good light source, and we'll go from there. What I'm doing right now is sanding and trying to see where the low spots are. And the way you can see a low spot is where it's lighter, that's where we've sanded, and where it's darker, it means there's a valley, and we haven't had the sandpaper hit that yet. So if we were to move up, this would remain whatever grit it is without getting finer and finer, and wouldn't be able to burnish as well. So I'm gonna keep sanding until it's all a uniform color and it feels to the touch flat. And now we can see it's all the same color. There's no part that hasn't been sanded yet. The next step is to get some water, put it on this edge, and again, you'll be able to see if there's a part that stays dry. It's because it's so deep that the water isn't even able to penetrate it. But this went on smoothly, and then we can do our first light burnish. And we're not going too fast. We're just using the canvas to start to align the leathers in the same direction. I'd say it's best to have clean cloths. I just got these. I had cloths that were about 2 years old, and they still allowed me to produce fine edges, but a clean cloth is better than one that has a lot of gunk on it. So we've done that first sanding, and with the light, we're looking to see if there's any obvious low points. It looks pretty good. The only one I can see is right here. There's a little bit of a low point. I could just hand sand that flat, but I want to make sure it's truly flat. A useful trick is to just put sandpaper on a flat surface and then slowly press the edge against it. We're not pushing too hard. We don't want it to mushroom out too much. Just slightly going over. And now, when I look at it again, it's a lot better, it's flatter. Another water burnish. Again, going the same direction with the canvas, aligning those fibers. Looking. And we just need to do a little bit more. And there we go. That's exactly what I want to see. Now it's all flat. When the light hits it, it's not playing off any sort of angles because it's all perfectly flush. So the next step is to move on to the next grit of sandpaper. That's 320 grit. This is a wet dry sandpaper. This is optional, but if you want to wet it first, just to get a little bit of water, you can then start sanding with it. And what that'll do is start the burnishing process before you even use canvas. We'll start with a dry sand first, and we're looking to find any low spots. Using the light to try and catch any. Still need to do a little work here. Looking at it. What I notice using the 320 grit is it goes by a lot quicker. You're not having to re-level. You're just refining that edge and making the grain, the fibers, a little bit shorter because you're using a higher grit sandpaper. It should feel smooth when you're sanding, not catching on anything. If it's catching on something, it usually means there's a little unevenness. We apply a little water, wipe it off, hold it up, and that's looking pretty good. No discernible peaks, no valleys, just a uniform flat level edge. You can add a little more water, and then lightly, not too much pressure, and we're going in the same direction. We're aligning those fibers. It doesn't matter necessarily starting from the back moving forward. You can start here and move back, as long as it's all in the same direction. Then when we look, and even comparing this first edge on the left that isn't truly flat with the one that is, should be able to see a little bit of difference. And that difference will only become more magnified as we go with higher and higher grits. I'll keep this the same so we can use it as a reference as we progress with this edge. So now we're ready to move on to 400 grit sandpaper. And again, as we sand, we're looking to see if there's any discoloration, parts that aren't being sanded due to an uneven surface, but this is looking good to go. And as you use higher grits of sandpaper, you're making these fibers shorter, more uniform, and because they're shorter, the characteristics of the leather are able to come out a little bit more. Even without using water, you can see that. But when you use water, when you dampen it, it'll pop even more. So if I were to just put water on half of it and then look, you're able to see each layer. There's 4 layers of leather. And by the time we're done, you'll be able to see each one clearly. I think it's just beautiful. We'll keep going. We're gonna wet the whole part, dry it off, align these fibers, water, and then burnish. And now that we're at the 400 grit, the fibers are so short that they're pretty much laid down already, and we can go back and forth, create a little more friction, and that will help us achieve a glossier edge, which means a more durable burnish. From the word burnish, burn, heat comes from friction comes from a little more speed. Now, as the edge gets glossier, the unevenness, if there was any, would be even more apparent. Again, that's why it's important, even if you have to do it a few times, you go over with the 220 grit until you have a truly flat surface. We did that, we did a few rounds of it, and now we get to reap the benefits. You can see the individual layers of leather, and we can keep going with the higher grit. So we've done 220, 320, 400, and now we can move on to 600. Again, we're still looking to see if there's any unevenness. I'm not seeing any. And it almost looks burnished before I even start using water or canvas. You can really start to see the layers. And if you feel it, it's very smooth. And after water and canvas, it could be done, but we're gonna keep going and seeing how good we can make it. We're making sure we wet the entire edge, every part, wipe off excess, and then go back and forth, trying to create a little bit of friction, not pushing too hard, and then look. And when you rotate it, you'll see the light reflect evenly, consistently, as you go up and down the entire edge. If we wanted to, this could be done, but there's a few extra steps you can do to really make your edge look professional and deepen the color of the burnish itself. The next step will be to resand with the 600 and get a little bit of Tokonole. What I like to do is just take the lid, place it flat, get a little, just enough on your finger, spread it out. A little goes a long way, and because the edge is perfectly flat, you need even less. So a little bit goes a long way. And then with a little bit of water, you go over that, kind of rehydrates it, allows you to get a uniform layer over the edge. And before even burnishing, look at that. It's already pretty shiny. I'll just do a little section here so we can compare. Here's unburnished, still a little matte, little reflective, light's bouncing off. But when you burnish, you're aligning those fibers, you're pressing it down, you're applying heat. The waxes in the Tokonole, they're going over the edge, creating a little bit of gloss, also giving a little bit of a protective layer, allowing the color to pop through a little bit more. If we're looking at 220 grit compared to 600 grit, it's a big difference, both in depth of color and uniformity of the edge. So we could be done, but we're not. We're gonna keep going, trying to get this as good as possible. The final step that I'm gonna do, again, this is optional, it just makes the depth of color a lot more vibrant, is use a fileteuse machine. This is one I have from Rocky Mountain. There's a newer version that has a digital read. You can set the temperature to exactly what you want. This one has a control knob. If you have that, it's at a 3. I know for me, it doesn't burn the edges at this temperature. We're just looking for it to melt the wax in to create one additional layer of protection between the edge and the leather itself. It's pretty warm. I think it's ready to go. I have my Columbus wax here. There's parts of it that I use for rubbing against the edge. You can see it's nice and smooth here. And then if I need additional wax to melt to create a perfectly flat top layer, I'll flip it over and use the tip of the creaser to melt the wax, and from there I'll apply it to the edge. So we're gonna take the Columbus wax, rub it on this edge gently. You won't really be able to see it come off. It will appear a little bit hazier or cloudy when looking at it with direct light. You take the fileteuse. I think there's a specific wax spatula that I don't have. I just use this rounded tip and it's fine for me. So use whatever you got. This has a flat edge that I'll be using to melt the wax into this top layer. And I find with the fileteuse, it even smooths the layer further. Acts as almost a heated sandpaper in a way, or just a guide that further aligns the fibers. It's one of those things where once you do it, you don't really go back because it looks so good. And we're just going over it quickly. If I were to hold this in the same place over an extended time, it would create a burn mark. It's that hot, but when you're just passing over, it's totally fine. And that's what I want to see. It's glossier. It has that protective quality from the wax. It really shows the color of the leather. You can see each layer and you know it's gonna look this good for a long time. You can burnish it again with canvas. Make sure everything's perfectly level. That edge is good to go. If you wanted to, you could do a few more layers. You could use the fileteuse to melt the wax onto the edge and layer that on, make it a little thicker. Or you could go back with the 600 grit because this is an additional layer. You can make it perfectly flat and then use Tokonole as a top layer. This is much more liquid and will fill in the micro creases and little valleys that are still here. I'm gonna take the 600. And again, we still have that uniform sanding. We're gonna take the Tokonole, little bit of water. And there, I think that's pretty much done. With edge finishing, it is a game of diminishing returns. You can get 80% of the results with 20% of the time. But if you want to go all the way, even higher grits, you can. The important thing is you start with a strong, flat edge, have a strong foundation, and move up from there. So even if you go up to only 320, start with a flush edge and it's gonna turn out great. And as you progress with your crafting journey, you'll probably use more and more expensive leather. So just make sure you're being careful with the sandpaper, making sure you're keeping things away from where you rest it down, because the last thing you want is to scratch a piece of shell cordovan, get a little bit of Tokonole in a place that'll blemish it permanently. Just be extra careful and you'll be good to go, but be careful. Thanks for taking the time. Can't wait to see what you make, and good luck out there.